Welcome to Inside the Set with SETDECOR. Inside the Set is a series that focuses on the design and decor of stories that excite us and ignite our imaginations, where we get to discuss the collaborations between production designers and set decorators, and hear firsthand accounts of how those works of art came to be, from their inception to ideas on the page through completion, where we sit in the dark and experience them collectively.
Welcome to Inside the Set with SETDECOR. I'm David Smith, SDSA. Today I'm pleased to welcome set decorator Natalie Papageorgiadis and production designer Alison Gartshore to discuss their spectacular work on the Netflix hit series Bridgerton. Natalie and Alison, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Great to have you. First of all, Alison, you were on the show for all 3 seasons, right? The first 2 as an art director, and now you're the production designer?
That's correct, yes. Natalie was also on from first season as well.
Okay, and then Natalie, how did you come on board?
So I was hired by Gina Cromwell, my predecessor. She was set decorator on season 1 and 2.
Right.
And I worked very closely with her in season 1 and 2, and then she decided to move on. And I took the reins in season 3.
And had you been a set decorator before, or is this fairly new to you?
No, I hadn't been a set decorator before. I was an assistant set decorator with her, but I lent a lot into my experience from working in interior design and hotel design, which actually has quite a lot of similarities in terms of project management. So that was all very, very useful.
How as a whole was this season for you to do? Did you find it fairly easy in the sense that you knew what the looks to go for and the look of the show?
We're lucky, aren't we, that we started that we had the background of season 1 and 2.
I don't think we could have come in and done a show like this from scratch.
Right.
We had the language already. We'd helped to build the world, and so it was a question of carrying it on.
And how much of it do you actually own? I'm sure that the sets are from the first 2 seasons. If they're going to be recurring, that they're built and ready to pull out. But what about set dressing? Do you own most of the set dressing at this point?
It's now up to 3 large warehouses of a lot of stock, but at the time of this season 3, coming into play, we had 2 large warehouses. But what we try and do is we try and use as much of our own stock as possible. We often, if we have a new set and then furniture or lighting or fabrics from a previous set, we do try and reuse what we can. And that, of course, that's not out of being lazy. That's, we try to be sustainable, actually. But yeah, we have a decent amount of our own stock. But it's you always have to get something new. You always have to customize. So there's always a lot of work to do.
How much of the show do you actually do on location, and how much are on stages, and how many stages do you have?
So season 3 was roughly 50-50. Split for location and on the stages. We had 3 stages which are full of standing sets, actually, at our base in London.
And do you have any backlot that you actually own, or do you start fresh each season?
For season 3 there was no backlot at all.
None at all.
So all of the street scenes were locations that we have to find and source and go in and work our magic and make them look fabulous.
Right, they do look fabulous, I have to say. And one of my favorite outdoor scenes was the Woodburn Walk.
We hadn't been to Woburn Walk before, but we knew that the Medice, the dressmaker, was moving, so she was upgrading. So we had to find a new location for her new, bigger, more expanded shop that she has. And as you can imagine, London was hit very heavily during the war, so it's actually quite difficult to find period streets that are good to film in.
This was pretty much the only option, wasn't it, Ali?
Yeah.
There wasn't really Yeah, because we needed a street that looked Georgian on both sides as well. There are some streets out there where you have one, you know, decent looking street side for filming, just one side. But of course, you know, that's very, very limiting. So I think this was one of the only options, really, wasn't
It
it?
was. I mean, across London, there's very few actual Georgian shops still left. There are a few. They're dotted around, but by and large, they've been redeveloped, and you find one Georgian space next to some Victorian spaces, next to some brand modern spaces. So it's difficult to find a run where you've got more than one side to film on. And of course, Bridgerton's always about the promenading, it's about the walking and talking. You know, so that's always plays a large part in what we do.
And of course, looking here, you redressed all the windows, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
One of my favorites is the one with all of the blue and white Chinese export ware. Did you bring in anything? Did you bring in the trellises in between the shops and the flowers? I'm sure you.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that was also to kind of help with filming so that there were, you know, opportunities to kind of break up the line a bit as well. And also there's a scene later on with Penelope and Colin where they need a more private place for their kiss. So we needed to have these kind of little corners already established in the space so that they had somewhere to go for that.
And we had to make the street, bring it into the world of Bridgerton. And Bridgerton, as we know, is heavy on the florals. It's part of the signature look for the show. So, you know, it was an opportunity for us to get lots of florals in there, make it a green space, make it much, much prettier than it actually is in reality. And as with any location, you'll always find that there's an awful lot of covering up to do of modern elements. So, you know, using greenery and florals to do that helps us enormously with that work.
Yeah, the trellises helped with drain pipes and things like that, covering all of that kind of thing. Yes, yeah.
One of my other favorites was the Cowper drawing room, which is new this season, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Cressida's bedroom. We had not gone to either of those before. I love the dark palette. I love the books. I love the severity of it. And I think that must be part of the charm of doing something that's not, you know, all floral and pastel for you, both of you.
It was a breath of fresh air to be able to do this one, actually.
Yeah.
It was all sort of based on the fact that Cressida's father is a very domineering father. He's not a very nice man. He rules the household with a rod of iron. It's not something that we've understood about Cressida's character before. We understand Cressida to be not a very nice person, but we haven't previously known why. So this gives us a glimpse into her upbringing and her background, and the fact that she comes from this very oppressive environment, and she's always dressed up to the nines. She's always in very pale pink, frilly costuming. You know, she's out on display. She has to get married. It's very important for her to get married for the family. So, you know, we sort of approached this whole design as if she was a caged bird in this very dark, domineering, masculine space, which is a new thing for Bridgerton, really.
Yeah, it was nice to be able to work on a set that's such a contrast from what you normally see in Bridgerton. And yeah, we learn more about Cressida this season, and you can see how, yeah, she's dressed in the pale pinks and, you know, just desperately kind of wants to get out of there. And I remember reading the script, and it's referred to as museum-like and a mausoleum, and you know, we stuck to this dark palette, and it was actually a really fun one to do, wasn't it, Ali? Because we could really lean into you know, these darker elements, the severity of the upbringing, the father being very strict, and yeah, we had a lot of fun with this one.
We changed the space quite a lot in terms of the from, you know, we deviated slightly from our normal space. This was much narrower, much taller, to give a feeling of oppression, actually, which was then complemented with the dressing. making the walls feel a bit closer. There was a reference in the script to big bookcases, but she actually isn't allowed to access the books at all, which we felt sort of was quite symptomatic of her upbringing.
Both of you just mentioned that there were keys to the look of the set in the script. Does that happen a lot, or is there a fair amount of I won't say free reign, but at one point I wondered which came first, you know, the costumes or the set palette, you know, because the costumes are so vibrant and so controlled, and also how much of it is in the script before you know, before you actually get to approach it and make the decision about what it's going to really look like.
Cressida was a known entity. We knew that her costuming would be the pale pink palette, which she always is in. But then, you know, there's always a certain amount of putting forward ideas for any space, which goes through the approvals process. So we put mood boards together. Once we've got an initial direction to go in, then we will start to work on visuals for a space, and get the approvals as we're going along.
How much of this were you able to hire? How much of it were you able to pull from your own stock? And were you able to get to create anything specifically for it, besides maybe drapery or?
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of this is specific. The drapes obviously have to be made new. So all the fabrics are selected with a purpose. The rug design is designed with a purpose. It ties into the color palette. The art department made those amazing bookcases. They're all, you know, custom made, have to be made to measure. I think I hired a few pieces. The sofas are dark horsehair. They're a hire, because I found something in a you know, a prop hire house which just said Cowper to me. So so we went for that. But a lot of the furniture pieces were bought in markets. The columns that we put in the windows were painted especially. And then we had these two fantastic busts made as well, especially for this set. I remember seeing something really nice in a French book, actually, which had, you know, Voltaire and the flowy hair and everything in a lovely bust of him in a window. I remember seeing that, thinking, well, it'd be good to do something like that, but it has to be heavy, grumpy looking British scholars, more like Lord Cowper, you know. So they look old and grumpy and tired, not kind of sophisticated and suave and French.
And were they actually carved, or were they carved in foam and then made in fiberglass, or what was the medium for the bust?
No, they were especially sculpted.
So were they a clay sculpt and then a cast and a plaster cast after?
And how much lead time, how much prep time did you have for what? Did you have like 10 weeks before you began the season or something like that?
I think we might have had 12 actually, between
12, I think we had, yeah.
And both of you came on at the same time, or were you on before Alison?
I think I probably
No, Alison started before me, didn't you?
Yeah, I think usually that's the case, because if we've got building work to do, which we did have for last season, then, you know, there's a certain amount of thinking time about what the script requirements are and which new sets we have to try and shoehorn into our stage spaces, or anything that we have to repurpose from something else. So we tend not to strike any of our sets, because we will always change them into different spaces, by, you know, changing the windows, changing the doors, putting, you know, we might cut a space in half with some columns and a header, for example. You know, there's many tricks up our sleeves to change up a space again.
And have you ever done sets within a standing set? If something is big and you have the space on stage and you can do a smaller set inside there too? We
have done that in the past, yes.
Yeah, done that, yeah.
It's never a very comfortable thing to do, but, you know, where we have to, we have to.
And Cressida's bedroom, my goodness, she is a she is a bit much, isn't she?
Well, it's not her though. I
Yeah.
think that she isn't a bit much. She's just responding to the situation that she finds herself in.
Yeah.
You know, she's under a massive amount of pressure from her parents to be married because they know that if she isn't married at a very young age, she'll be left on the shelf and there's no hope for her. So, you know, we sort of wanted her to feel like she was a doll in a doll's house almost, that, you know, other people were playing with her, but actually it's her life that's at stake here. It's her reputation that's at stake. So I think it pushes her and her mum to sort of greater lengths to make sure that she's catching the eye of whoever is an eligible bachelor at the time. So this is one of the sets where we played quite a lot in terms of the costuming that's in the background. You know, we wanted to have a display of her dresses and her finery and her feathers all around her, so that she's really embedded in that sort of dressing up Barbie doll kind of feeling.
Yeah, this is her private dress up space.
Yeah.
But it's not your kind of archetypal Barbie space in such as it's, you know, it's got the heavy masculine background colors that she's, you know, enclosed in, and that she's sort of captured in that space. But she's always in the pale feminine or strong, you know, stronger colors, because she does have a stronger part to her personality. But she's definitely meant to feel like she's, yeah, stuck in a cage.
And it shows her vulnerability as well, I think, you know, that all her things around her, you know, and yet she can't find her man despite all of that.
And how much of the clothing on display has she actually worn before, or were they created for this, or what was your relationship with the costume department to acquire these?
They let us borrow those. They were all made for the show.
Right.
I think she might have worn them on some of the other sets.
Yeah, I think they're all her costumes that they allowed us to use as the dressing, because actually costume really bought into this idea that she'd be surrounded by all her clothing. So they were quite happy. We do have a really good relationship with the costume department. Actually, it's really important for us that we're doing something that complements what they're doing, because obviously it is a costume drama. So, you know, we have to make sure that our colours are not going to interfere with their colours. And there have been times where we have had to change what we're doing in order to accommodate their costuming, which is all part of the fun.
Did you indeed do the Austrian shade there? I don't remember seeing it, but I was just wondering if you did it and it didn't get featured, or I missed it.
No, we didn't do that for Cressida, but we used the main drapery design we used in her room.
Because the drapery on the show is quite fantastic. Do you have someone on your crew who has been with the show from the beginning?
Yes, yeah, we do. We've got two very highly skilled drapes team members, a drapes master and a supervising drapes. And yeah, they're both amazing, and they've been on it since the beginning. Yeah.
And is it manufactured there within your shop, or do you hire it out?
Oh, they work just with us.
Okay.
We hire a small team, and they work just with us.
And they bring in sewing tables and machines and have it, or does it go off premises to do?
They have their own workshop off premises.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they work from there.
And again, how much time do you have to dress something like the Cowper bedroom and the drawing room, as opposed to, are those fairly quick dresses?
Well, we got the information through about that set relatively late, actually. It's in block 4 of the show, so I think it appears in episodes 7 and 8, maybe, or maybe just episode 7, but it's definitely in block 4 of filming. We film in 4 blocks. So this was quite a major set that was quite far down the line, but it was, it just shows that it's not kind of a lot of work at the beginning and then it peters out at the end. You know, we still, even in the last block of filming, we're still having to produce really quite major sets. It wasn't a big turnaround time. We didn't actually have that much time.
But generally you have
but
a week to dress, don't you? Around about a week to dress.
Yeah, we had maybe about, yeah, but we didn't have a lot of prep. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So if you shoot in 4 blocks, they're not really just full 2 episodes, right? You're doing bits and pieces from, if a set appears. Are you lucky enough to be able to shoot the 4 blocks and have a set that plays in all 4 episodes shot at one time? Or are you shooting? No.
Unfortunately,
you're really not
no.
shooting like a movie. Exactly.
No, we
No.
don't have that luxury because things change along the way. Scripts get taken back and they get reworked, and you know what, you start with what you think all the information that you need, and very quickly you realize that you don't have half the information as you're going along. We do have quite a lot of standing sets. So for example, the Bridgerton drawing room, the iconic Bridgerton drawing room, is a standing set, so that is always there. It's dressed and available for us to use for whatever scene it needs to be. But then we have several sets which are swing sets, which occasionally we have to swing them one way and then back again the other way within a block on occasion. So it can get a little bit hairy on the timing of everything. It's like a huge jigsaw puzzle, you know, working out if we've got building in any of the stages, if we've got painting going on, if they're shooting in the stages, we've got to stop the work. Yeah, it's quite a headache fitting it all in.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. I often laugh with some of my friends in my friendship group. I say, you need to be fit to do this job. You need to be physically fit because it does keep you on your toes for quite a long time. So, but I think the main reason we shoot in blocks as well is because we have a different director. So we may well revisit certain sets from other blocks, but you know, I think it's more to do with that, isn't it, Ali?
And I think we just haven't got the luxury of being able to know exactly what we're going to be shooting out on location. So that, again, just like the standing sets, we have standing locations like the Bridgerton exterior. We'll generally have to go back to that exterior once a block to cover off any of the scenes within that particular block. It's not ideal in terms of making it a cost-effective process, but it's just the way that we have to do it. The other problem that we're up against for location work in this country is that they're often very, very popular for other events and weddings. And so, you know, they might not be available to us for a huge long block of filming because of their other bookings. So we often have to work around what the location availability is. Yeah, that's always a consideration.
That always happens. You know, I think production always aims to be as efficient as they can, but always, you know, at the end, you're going back and picking up bits and pieces that from episodes 1, 2, 3, 4 that, you know, haven't worked or that they have decided that they need to fine tune in some way. And it's always a chore. Are you lucky enough you have a number of balls in this season, right? I think you have more than 4. Are you
6?
Yes.
I think it was 6,
Were they scattered in between blocks, or did you unfortunately had like 3 or 4 balls back to back?
No, I think we had 2 in the first block. So they are scattered throughout the series. We don't ever do them back to back because for season 3 they were all more or less, I think we had 2 on location, and then the other 4 we built in our stages. But of course, to turn around a ballroom scenario, it's a big, long process. It takes 3 or 4 months to do that because there's often a lot of building work to do. So the building process, the drawing and the building process will take, you know, a good 12 weeks or so, 10 weeks, something like that. And then there's a huge amount of the set decoration, the dressing to go in, because the balls are quite flamboyant, you may have noticed, and you know there's a lot of this area to cover, so it takes a long time.
And you have a large cast, right? This is your
Yeah.
the largest gathering of people. And how are the balls shot? Are they shot like over a 4 or 5 day, or is it
Yeah.
2 or 3 days?
Roughly around a week to cover off a whole ball scene. There's always an awful lot of interaction between the main characters. There's always a lot of dialogue. Obviously, there's the dancing as well, which takes its time. And then, you know, when you've got a space with 150 extras, it's difficult. It's a slow process to wrangle all those people.
Well, I'm fascinated by the fact that you do some of the balls on location as well. But I mean, there's always a ton of silk flowers on the show. Who's in charge of that? Do you have a department, especially and specifically to do the greens? I mean, because it isn't just an untrained crew just putting silk flowers up. It has to have some sort of purpose to.
Yeah, well, we have greens people, and we also have a handful of florists. Again, we have quite a lot of stock. We try to use a lot of our own stock, but when it comes to doing these beautiful interiors like we can see now, that's more often the florists that are doing that. Sometimes the florals are a combination of greens team and florists when there's quite a lot of coverage. We had that in the Four Seasons ball. But yeah, we're very lucky. We've got a very, very highly skilled florists that do beautiful work.
And is it the same florist team that started season 1 and have been with you the whole time, or has that changed?
It's a mix. It's a mix. Yeah, it's a mix. But yeah, most of our florals are faux, just because it's so much easier for filming. And actually, you can get, you know, when faux flowers started out not started out, but you know, about 10 years ago or so, yeah, I remember they would mainly be in these kind of very bright colors, but nowadays you really can get some great stuff, really convincing looking stuff. I mean, there's some stuff as well that's very plasticky looking, but we we have a team of buyers as well. The assistant set decorators and the juniors, they all get involved, and they source what we need for each set wherever it's from. We also try and go straight to wholesalers,
right?
Because we have such large quantities. If we bought that all, you know, in a non-trade way, that would be very, very expensive.
And I don't remember in the first season, but I'm sure it happened as well. But when did the feathers start to get incorporated into the flowers as well? And how do you make that decision? Who has feathers and who doesn't have feathers combined with the florals?
I think it depends on what's going on in the scene, really.
Featheringtons, I seem to think, have always maybe had feathers in their florals because they're more flamboyant, they're a bit more Versace.
Yeah, we used to nickname them the Versace, yeah.
And each ball, if you have a bit of like 10 or 12 weeks to put it together, as far as building the scenery, is it on a whole separate stage? Do you have a stage that's set aside, or 2 stages that are set aside for balls?
No, sadly not. For season 3, we had the balls on our largest stage here, which unfortunately also isn't a sound stage. So it's quite difficult. It was very difficult during season 3 to turn around the balls. We have lots and lots of other sets in that space, and so every time they're in the stage shooting, the ball work had to stop, and that causes a massive issue because we all know that, you know, a construction team, once they go, you got to keep them busy and working and feed that machine, and if you have to start it makes the whole process a lot longer than it should be.
I'm still fascinated by all the flowers that come into play, and how much time. I know there's a certain amount that you can do off premises and bring them on all done, but they all have to tie together. But if you're starting to do walls or trees, and do you ever have any sort of walls that you have specifically knowing that you're going to turn that into a floral wall to help give you the mass?
Walls we do in situ, yeah. do that in situ. So
We
I think
yeah.
doing all the florals here, probably, I think we had about 2 weeks, didn't we, Ali? It was
I
about 2
think it
weeks.
was something like that, because once the construction phase had finished and the painters had finished their work and we hand over to set deck, this particular, the Four Seasons ball, we knew that there was going to be an awfully big long dress time to get the all the greenery and the foliage and the trees in and to blend it, because we wanted an ombre through the seasons, so from spring at the top of the stairs coming down into summer through to autumn and then winter along the back wall, and it all had to blend seamlessly. So we did know that that was going to be a particularly long dress, so we built in a little bit of extra time in the dress phase for our florists to come in and do that work. I think, didn't we do some of the work sort of off the set and bring it in terms of the garlanding, and then once
Yeah,
it was
some
all
of it,
did.
some, but
Yeah.
the garlanding, the kind of thick, heavy garlanding down the staircase, some of that was done off site. But anything on the walls, really, that was done in situ. Yeah, it was quite an intricate process, and you know, obviously quite challenging to work out the quantities needed for the 4 different seasons, and you know, that was also part of the challenge as well.
Getting the colours, I seem to remember we
but-
had quite a lot of discussion about the types of florals to use for each season and which would blend through to the next season successfully, and trying to define what spring colours were as opposed to summer colours. And I mean, autumn is very obvious and winter is quite obvious too, but the spring and summer took quite a bit of working out, I seem to feel.
Yeah, I think we started with one version, didn't we? And then we weren't quite happy with it, so we amended it. And we might even have amended it actually due to what was available to buy as well.
Now, I do want to talk, before we run out of time, I want to talk about the Featherington Wedding Banquet and also the Featherington Ball, because both of those are really terrific looking sets. The Featherington Wedding Breakfast, clearly there's a food stylist or someone involved with doing that, or maybe you have a lot of input with that, Natalie or Alison, I'm not quite sure. How does that work there?
Yeah, I loved this set. This was hilarious. I mean, the Featheringtons are so much fun anyway. But we have that huge cake that you see at the beginning. And it was actually turned out a bit big. It was meant to be in the center of the room, and the director quite rightly decided, okay, we're going to have to put that to the side. But yeah, we had a fantastic food stylist. There's some great references of food display, which are completely over the top, but are completely Featherington, and the 2 towers either side of the cake. He just recreated those, so they're so spot on. But they were so heavy that we actually had to use some wire in between the tiers of the food display to keep it all together. And the cake itself is just magnificent, very over the top in Featherington.
Yeah.
And was the walls were painted, but were the drapery there as well?
The drapery's hired, so we brought that in for our scene, and the drapery stands on it's on a metal stand that which is just set off from the wall, so that we're never allowed to touch. You know, when we shoot on location, we can't screw into the walls. Obviously, can't paint the walls. We can't. You know, we have to be as respectful as possible.
Well, and I think the one set that we didn't talk about was Colin's apartment.
Our protagonist.
Your protagonist.
Yes, got to talk about him. Yeah, I loved Kate and Anthony's. I loved the Featherington breakfast. That was really fun. And I loved this. I loved the Cowper as well. I mean, you know, I feel so lucky having worked on this show. There's so many gorgeous sets. I think the one that was quite trying was the balloon race. But this was another really fun one to do, one that you could really lean into, Colin's back from his travels, so his belongings kind of evolved a bit because he references France quite a lot, but there's paintings of classic places in Greece and kind of more classical type stuff, and we took a lot of influence from the Soane Museum as well in London, and he collected things from his travels, so he's got these cabinets with all these beautiful belongings in them, and both Ali and I have got some great books actually on cabinets of curiosity. You can get whole books on that, and we lent into that a lot into this set. And then the fabrics are quite French, and you can see the wall lights there in the background. They're also kind of your typical Rococo French style, but he's our lead, and so I think the novel that this is based on, I think is called Romancing Mr. Mr. Bridgerton. Yeah. So we made him very romantic.
Yeah. And you can just see in the wall panel moldings, there's little love hearts in the corners, which we chose specifically to kind of subliminally tell the love story, I suppose.
And there's a fourth season planned, obviously, correct?
Indeed.
And then are you doing the fourth season, both of you?
We've just finished the fourth season.
Oh, you've just finished?
Just finished.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And we'll see you hopefully maybe next year.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Inside the Set with SETDECOR. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, setdecor.com.